Welcome to the first episode of Steelers Breakdown here on Sportsman Mafia. And today we're going to be talking about the Steelers and Browns game. And man, we got a lot to get into here. So let's just jump straight in. Obviously, took a 13-6 loss to the Browns. It was classic Tomlin game. Moving to 9-7, games on the line, divisions on the line against the Ravens in Week 18. Let's talk about some things from the game, some aspects. Refs were questionable, but not to blame. The Hayward roughing the passer, not a great call. You had the Marquez Valdes-Scantling OPI. That was basically a phantom call. But, once again, not to blame at all. You're playing the Cleveland Browns, who are 3-12. And by the way, that brings a fun little stat for Mike Tomlin here. I have it listed right here. The Steelers are now 0-4-1 in their last 5 games against 8+ loss teams. 2020, they lost to the 2-10-1 Bengals. 2021, they lost to the 0-8 Lions. 2023, they lost to the 2-10 Cardinals. And I actually think I missed one because I know they lost to a 10-loss Patriots team that year. And then in 2025, they lost to the 3-12 Browns. So, you got that going for you. You have a coach that has just failed to beat bad teams in games where it mattered because these teams have 8+ losses. That implies that it's late in the season, and he's not getting it done against teams he should late in the season. Today, I just felt like from a fan aspect and an analyst aspect, it was just a gutless coaching game. I feel like the game was coached not to win, but to prevent losing. And in the NFL, you're not going to beat anyone playing like that. We see the coaches that coach scared end up fired. You play the Browns, and you come out, and Myles Garrett has the sack record in his mind. He's not worried about winning. We know that. He has the sack record in mind. He comes into this game. That is his only goal for this game. And it looked like the Steelers' only goal was to keep him from achieving that. I feel like they coached away from Myles Garrett. They didn't even run at him, which he's been an all right run stopper this year. But teams have had success taking him out of games by just running the ball. And we couldn't get anything going. We couldn't get a push. Darnell Washington going out really affected that. They just announced a couple of minutes ago that he does have a broken arm, so he'll likely miss the rest of the season. I feel like their loyalty to TJ Watt was a big factor in today's game. I think Myles Garrett gets that sack out of the way. You get a big roar from the crowd. He's going to go crazy and all that. But at least you don't have them anticipating that the rest of the game. That promised one thing, and that was that the Browns fans were going to stay engaged the entire time. So yeah, the quick passes, the throwing it away instead of letting him get a sack, all the attention that we threw at him. And it was all for what? Myles Garrett had 5 sacks against the Patriots, and they scored 32 points on that Browns defense. We have known for years as Steelers fans that Myles Garrett's sacks do not affect games. They call him a game wrecker, but a lot of his sacks come in games where they're getting beat pretty bad. And the formula to beat the Browns isn't to keep Myles Garrett off the board. But yeah, I think the loyalty they had to TJ to protect his record today cost them the game, and I believe that Myles Garrett's probably going to get a sack on Burrow next week anyway. But enough of that. Let's move on to the commentators. It was a rough game for the commentary, man. If you didn't just turn that game down, you're a better person than me. You had Tony Romo literally chanting Myles Garrett's name in the fourth quarter. He got mentioned on all but 4 defensive snaps, according to a post I saw. And Jim Nantz was literally about to cry when Jack Sawyer picked off Shedeur Sanders. And that, when you're watching a game and a team is getting cheered for, that's always a tough watch. But turn the broadcast down, move on. No big deal. Now let's talk about some aspects of this game that led to the Steelers losing. They were 3 for 15 on third down today. They were 0 for 3 on fourth down, obviously. We know that. They had 0 second half points. And you know what? I even put in my notes here, the defense made plays today. You had the 2 picks, obviously, by Sawyer and Kyle Duggar, which, by the way, Kyle Duggar was a great trade. He had 1 bonehead play today. He made up for it. And the 2 Highsmith sacks where he took down Shedeur, who's been running the ball really well these last couple weeks. He had 50 rushing yards against Buffalo, and he gashed them a lot, and that kept them in that game. 15 points. That was my magic number to beat the Cleveland Browns. I felt that if the Steelers got to 15 points, that they would win that football game. And they got to 6. And you know what? My pregame magic number could have even been lower. If they scored 11 points, they would have beaten the Browns because the Browns would have never had to kick the field goal when you turned the ball over. So you're playing a team where there's a guy trying to steal your player's sack record, and all you have to do is score 11 points, but instead the game plan is to not let him break the record, and you play all sheltered and stuff. And we saw on the last drive, Rodgers took over. Those weren't Arthur Smith play calls. Those weren't Mike Tomlin play calls. That last drive was Aaron Rodgers. And, unfortunately enough, I have listed here, Marquez Valdes-Scantling getting 9 targets cannot happen, especially in the red zone. Freiermuth had 2 huge catches on that last drive, and you don't even look at him in the red zone. That was a big flaw at the end of this game, and it's a game that I feel that if it went into overtime, that it was going to go the Steelers' way for sure. A lot of people were talking about the no call on the last play. If you're a ref in that situation and it's even close, you got to let it go, man. I don't know how people can watch that entire game and what comes out of it is them saying, I think the last call of the game was bad by the refs. Sure, he was handsy, and maybe he made contact a little early. But one, you have to consider Marquez Valdes-Scantling still had to catch the football. And 2, the refs are not going to call a DPI in the end zone that was questionable on a 4th and goal in an upset game that, I hate to say it, helps the NFL's viewership, because next week they'll move the Ravens Steelers to primetime, and that game will be for the... Next up, Scotty Miller, best receiver for Pittsburgh today. DK suspension's looking like it's going to cost us the season. And in a season where we traded away George Pickens for a 3rd-round pick, he ended up producing top 3 level stats. And we have a guy who put up 850 yards. And this is no slander to DK, but the talks we were having about George Pickens were all about his mind and whether he was there for the team and all this stuff. And now he's gone. Don't got to worry about him. I'll tell you one thing that George Pickens never did. He never fought a fan. And that could cost the Steelers their season. I mean, Scotty Miller was your number 1 receiver today. That's not going to win football games in the NFL. Boswell's kicking woes. Now, he's been so good, so it hurts to talk about him in a negative manner. Tough conditions today. Had 2 left to right field goals that bent in, 17-mile-per-hour winds. I'm going to give him some slack on that, especially the bad Waitman hold, dropped the snap, but he got it down. But the 3rd kick, man, just to push it to the right, was very un-Boswell-like. And that ended up affecting the game a lot because the Steelers felt that they had to go for a touchdown. Well, they did have to go for a touchdown, whereas if he made that, they're looking at a field goal to take the lead. But, we have much bigger problems than our kicker. Like I mentioned earlier, I have Darnell broken arm listed on here. That's going to be rough for the Steelers. I mean, they're insanely good when he plays over 40 snaps in a game, and it's doubtful that he's going to play in a cast, the rest of the season, especially with a fully broken arm. But yeah, all on the line versus the Ravens, and we're going to have to see if Tomlin's job can survive another collapse. How many times can he have a late season collapse and survive it? And we're going to see next Sunday night if he can survive another one of those. It's likely going to be a primetime game, as I mentioned earlier. The Ravens do open as 3-point favorites in a win-or-go-home game, which basically means it's an extra playoff game. You got to look at this game against the Ravens as a play-in game or even just like a wild card game. And yeah, I mean, a lot rides on this game. Aaron Rodgers' future possibly coming back next year is not going to happen if you lose that game. Tomlin's going to be put into question. Terrell Austin is not going to get an extension, which, I mean, we've been talking about that for a while. Arthur Smith, I'm not sure if there's any questions there. But honestly, Tomlin, because he may not get fired, but the fans are going to be completely out on him. And that is such a huge thing to have a coach that a fan base just isn't behind. And Tomlin is getting to that point, and he could fully lose this fan base with a loss next Sunday. This would be one of the worst collapses, if not the worst collapse, I've seen from the Steelers late in the season. Sure, last year you take 5 straight to end the season down, but when you have to just beat the 3-12 Browns in Cleveland, you got to win that football game. Huntington Bank Field has some voodoo magic to it that the Steelers just can't get past, and you have to win that football game. And it's not a hard football game to win by any means. Like I mentioned, my magic number was 15 points. You scored 6. You tried to not give Myles Garrett the sack record, which he'll inevitably get next week. But, you know, that's going to really wrap it up for today's episode. I think the Steelers have a lot to go over in the next couple days. If the Ravens stack the box, they could end up in big trouble quick. You let Derrick Henry get some big runs going, you might as well just chalk it up as an L. Fans need to bring the energy. Sunday Night Football in Pittsburgh, there's no excuse that we lose that game due to a lack of energy. If they beat us, they're just going to be better. But the fans got to bring the energy, the players got to bring the energy, and Tomlin's got to get his guys ready to go. So, yeah, that's going to wrap it up for today. Appreciate you watching. Subscribe. I'm going to put my TikTok link in the bio below. Make sure to go check it out. That's where I post most of my content, although I will start to post on here now. And, yeah, go Steelers.